You're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek, where we discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings found in all the Star Trek TV, series, movies, and more. And today we're discussing the latest episode of Lower Decks called Room for Growth. I'm Dom Bettinelli, and joining me today on the panel is Jimmy Akin. Hey, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
Folks, remember to like The Secrets of Star Trek on Facebook, where we're at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. Retweet us on Twitter, where we're at SQPN, and be sure to leave comments wherever you find us. We love to talk with you and have conversations with you and hear what you think. There's another show on the StarQuest Network you're sure to enjoy called Pray Station Portable. It's the Divine Office or Liturgy of the Hours of the Church, and it's an opportunity for prayer throughout the day. And you can find that wherever fine podcasts are found or at sqpn.com/PSP. So, Jimmy, we're talking about the latest episode of Lower Decks in this most recent season, and could you give us a recap of what happens in Room for Growth?
Yeah, for once, it's not super complicated. This week, Captain Freeman is possessed by an ancient mask, apparently not for the first time, and she turns much of the Cerritos into a temple. This puts stress on the engineering staff who have to fix the ship, and the captain decides they've been under too much stress as a result of the recent mask incidents. She takes them to a Starfleet spa ship known as the Dove to de-stress, but the engineers compulsively keep working anyway, which causes Captain Freeman to freak out. She's been repressing months of stress from the ancient mask experiences she's had, and the officials on the Dove are about to send her back to Earth for intensive treatment. But the engineers save the day at the last minute by building a machine that de-stresses her in just 10 seconds, because for them, doing engineering is fun and relaxing. Meanwhile, Mariner, Boimler, and Tendi are trying to get the gang's names entered into a lottery for 4 open rooms on Deck 1. But Tendi overhears their arch rivals, Delta Shift, planning to rig the lottery. This forces our gang to go on a long journey through the Cerritos to get to the lottery computer first. But when they get there, they discover that the lottery isn't for 4 rooms on Deck 1, but for 1 room on Deck 4. And they don't want their own group to be broken up by not being able to live next to each other, so they decide to let Delta Shift rig the lottery and ruin their own friendships. However, when the clever Delta Shifters win, they put 4 beds into the room, turning it into their personal party room. The end.
Sounds like a college prank, you know, like the whole, we got to get the good suite in the dorm and we're going to rig the and in fact, that's kind of what it feels like throughout this, is sort of a college fraternity prank thing. Yeah.
Incidentally, note the inversion we had from last episode where we have our lower deckers versus some other lower deckers, and they end up being friends in the end, you know, because the lower deckers from the Carlsbad actually think the Cerritos is really cool, even though they pretended like they didn't think that. And here we have almost the same plot where they end up stuck at a certain point with the Delta Shift people, and they start swapping stories and bonding. And just as our group, the Beta Shift, is saying, well, it's so nice that we, you know, have actually bonded and be friends and everything, the Deltas immediately betray them.
Right. Yeah, that was a nice, I noticed that too. That was my first note, is that another story of them clashing with rivals, but the outcome is different. And so the expectation that we had was different. And I like that. That was pretty good. I also noticed, like, as the episode started, we had this, their usual, like, dorms in a hallway. I mean, they have these bunks in a hallway, and it's very crowded. It's overcrowded, and so you kind of get this idea that
it's like a submarine where they have berths that people will sleep in, but not full bedrooms all the time.
Right. And so, you get the sense that the Cerritos is this overcrowded small ship, unlike the expansive Enterprise, where, you know, I think I saw someone did a calculation once on the size of the Enterprise as they depict it and how much room 1,000 people will take up, given what we see of the sizes of corridors and quarters. And it's like it takes up, like, the living space on the Enterprise. It's like a quarter of the volume of the ship. And so what's all the rest of that space? It's funny. So this is obviously overcrowded. I do like the whole we have an ancient mask situation here, which kind of puts a pin in the whole idea that ancient masks have that are possessed or that take control of people have a way of popping up in Star Trek.
Yeah, and the design of the ancient mask that Captain Freeman is wearing is very closely modeled off of one that Data wore in a Next Generation episode called Masks, where Data played different personalities from this ancient civilization's mythology. The main one was a female deity named Masaka.
Mm-hmm.
And here Captain Freeman is possessed by a mask that turns her into an ancient deity named Manuki.
Right. So Manuki starts like converting the ship into like this ancient temple. So the walls become stone with vines and water features flowing down and water flowing down them. And so engineering has to undo all that after she's stopped.
It's a little reminiscent, actually, of that episode of Strange New Worlds, where the doctor's daughter's fantasy book comes to life and takes over the ship.
Yeah, although that one is undone. It's like they don't have to fix it up. So, and that causes the engineering crew to get overworked because it's so much work to fix all this. Did you notice one of the female engineers in engineering has a Geordi LaForge visor? I noticed they put that in there.
Which is interesting because Rutherford half has that.
Yes. Yeah, he's got this eyepiece that goes over that gives him additional abilities, to see certain things. Yeah, so that's true. And then Commander Billups, the chief engineer, has a breakdown in engineering when the captain comes in. He kind of loses it a little bit because they're overworked repairing all this. And so Freeman arranges a getaway for them, like a mandatory vacation. And then hijinks ensue, as you mentioned. We have not Ta'ana, what's her name? Tendi. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of T names in here, by the way. Tendi overhears Delta Shift plotting, and so she tells the others that what they've got planned. And so you have these different shifts on board the ship. We probably should remind folks that there's the Alpha, Bravo, and Delta Shift, and Delta Shift. It's usually a three shift rotation.
This ship apparently is using a 4-shift rotation, and they established that as far back as the 2-parter Next Gen episode Chain of Command, where Captain Jellicoe takes over the ship from Captain Picard and wants to institute a 4-shift rotation instead of the 3-shift rotation they had been using. And Riker is a total whiny jerk about it.
Well, to be fair, that is a huge disruption to the ship. But yes, I'm less sympathetic on that. Because you've got 1,000 people on this ship, and I understand that you're rearranging people's schedules, but you shouldn't. This is the flagship. You shouldn't be critically understaffed to the point that you don't have enough people to man 4 shifts. That should be part of strategic planning, and you should just be able to have a spreadsheet run that will come up with everybody's schedules. And especially,
so
as advanced as their computer is, it should be able to take care of it. Yeah.
So I actually think Captain Jellicoe was being perfectly reasonable on this. And he's written in a kind of unsympathetic way, but Captain Jellicoe is actually consistently reasonable. And so I think he kind of gets a bad rap, but the shifts here would be Alpha, Beta, Gamma, and Delta. And so if you think about a clock face, if Beta shift is on for 6 hours during the day, then Delta is going to be on for 6 hours, phase shifted 12 hours from them.
Mm-hmm.
So one team is going to be sleeping when the other is awake and so forth, and they're not going to have a lot of interaction.
Right, right. Yeah, they're on for 6 hours, but they'll have a few hours where they're like off duty and hanging out before going to sleep, and so they interact in those. But yeah, they're the night shift essentially. The I think even the graveyard shift, like the very late night. So and then there's this amusing rivalry between them. Yeah. So there's open quarters on deck one, which is funny because deck one is usually where the bridge is. So I can't imagine there's that many quarters on deck one. There's the captain's ready room. I guess the captain's quarters, logically to my mind, that's where the captain's quarters would be, is near the bridge, but apparently not. Yeah, just kind of funny that they assume that, sure, there's 4 open quarters there. Like, you wouldn't know. Like, why would it be open? Did people leave? Did we have an accident did we lose crew members on the last mission? That sort of thing. So it's kind of funny that they had this mistake. They just don't even stop to consider whether this is accurate information they have or not. So Delta Shift is going to cheat the lottery, and Mariner's justification for our lower deckers cheating is, after all the times we've been cheated in the lottery, it's our turn. And Boimler then provides the added justification, well, if we don't do it, they will. It is it really a gray area? Like, is this is not really all that gray. This is cheating, right? Like, they're just justifying themselves here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just thought that was kind of a funny, a little, you hear that very often from people sometimes, oh, well, it's our turn to, so if we have to cheat to get our that's just justice. Like, no, it's still cheating.
No, what you should do is turn them in.
Right. Disqualify them. Then you have a much better chance. Yeah. But that wouldn't be as funny. So we don't do that.
Yeah. So, this is part of why the episode summary is shorter this week, because Boimler then has an overly convoluted plan to how do we get to the air-gapped lottery computer. And so it's just a lot of incidents strung together, like beads on a string. But they're entertaining.
Yes.
So like the first one, or one of the first ones they go to, is they got to cut through the holodeck.
Yes.
And when they get there, there's a session that's active, and they barge in on it anyway and just say, just slink around whatever's happening. Dr. Ta'ana and Shax are in there, and it's all black and white, which is cool. They've got the black and white filter turned on, and they're pretending to be gangsters in like a 1930s gangster movie.
Right.
And I like the when the lower deckers come in, Boimler is like, oh, I know what this is. This is where people used to store their money. I think it's called a bonk. and Tindy assumes this mocking, I'd like some pieces of paper that have no intrinsic value.
Right.
Which is a really great, if you're they're leaning into the ridiculousness of the Federation not having money. But I love how the writers put themselves into the mindset of someone who doesn't know what money is and how it works, and we're able to think back as how would they mock money. It's like, ooh, I'd like some pieces of paper that have no intrinsic value.
which is not wrong. They have no intrinsic value.
Yeah, it's okay. These are contracts. That's what they are. Contracts have value, not the paper they're written on.
Right. So, since we're talking about the holodeck program, apparently Ta'ana and Shax are in a relationship. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like Lower Decks this season is more risky and edgier than in the past? Because I know the Mugato episode was pretty risque.
Oh yeah, it was,
and more so even I think than this one. But someone pointed out to me, yeah. Someone pointed out to me, this just felt more adult, more aimed at this prurient humor than the last season. I don't know if that's true.
I don't think so. I don't think it's an element of the show, but I don't think it's getting worse or anything like that. This is not as bad as it's been.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, there could be a tendency to, as you go on, to look for more and more laughs based on, pushing the boundaries, that sort of thing. But I don't think we've actually hit that yet.
Yeah, but we're in episode 4. of the season. We don't have a big enough data sample to make a judgment about is the season distinctly different.
Yeah, yeah. It was a bit uncomfortable. So it was like, oh man, that's a little more than I needed to know about Tana and Shax.
But they don't really. It's all in dialogue. They're not doing anything sexy.
Right, right.
And it's just innuendo.
Yeah, I mean,
really,
Shax is funny. Yeah,
where it is in the mouths of the lower deckers, because they're interpreting this as, oh, this is some kind of foreplay for them, but it's not obvious that that's what it is. If they hadn't included that line,
yeah, they do say something that they're going to do. Like Tana and Shax say something that is explicitly referencing it. We don't have to get into it, but yeah,
I don't remember that, so it must have just in one ear out the other.
Yeah. To your credit, that's to your credit. So from there they go down.
Although Dr. Ta'ana does offer to. So what struck me in that scene is Shax is wanting to stop the crime play that they're engaging in. That's the term he uses for it, or that they use for it. And it's kind of like, I guess this is kind of like their version of playing Grand Theft Auto or something.
Yeah.
Or a first person shooter game where you're not a defined good guy. So I thought, okay, well, I guess we have crime play video games today, and that's essentially what they're doing.
Yeah.
But Shax is wanting to stop it and have a serious conversation. And he says, I died and we never even talked about it.
Right. That's actually a good point. Yeah.
And that's what stuck out to me. And then to divert him from telling the story of his death and return, she offers to tell him how she lost her tail.
Right.
Which I had never even noticed before that she didn't have a tail.
Right.
Maybe I don't know. Maybe she did in the first season and it vanished in season 2 or something, or maybe she never had a tail, but I never noticed it. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I mean, I never maybe she was a species without tails, like a feline. But yeah. And that's when Tendy's like, no, I want to hear this story. Don't make me go. No, we have to go. And they turned off the safeties, by the way, in the holodeck, so they could die from the bullets and that sort of stuff. So they're really risking their lives.
Which is like Klingon, like Worf turning off the safeties for Klingon batleth practice.
Yes, Klingon calisthenics, which I love that term. So there's a swamp under the hydroponics bay. That's the next area they end up in.
Which is really good, because if you have like trees, and they showed on Next Gen that they had trees in their hydroponics or in their
they have a garden,
whatever it is. Most of the tree is underground. You're gonna need something down there. This is not just put it in a pot and have it be a full size tree.
Right.
And I love, as they're going through that, they're thinking about the people up in the botanical garden, and they're saying, what person would want to like join Starfleet and go into space to study plants? And we pan up to the garden. And there's Kayshawn, the guy who talks in metaphors, and he's working on flowers, right. and as he does so, he says, "Oh, Gramble, his throat slit by his mistress." right.
Yeah. The path to Kamada in spring. Whoopee! Gramble, his throat split by his mistress. As he snips, that's what he's doing. He's snipping the flower. Yeah. What kind of weirdo sends her for a job in outer space just to garden? Did you notice in the swamp underneath the hydroponics bay that there was a skeleton among the roots, like a crew member who died in there? Okay, so that was funny. Anyway, it turns out it's full of nitrous oxide. And Boimler and Mariner begin to hallucinate. Tendi is not affected. Apparently, Orions are not affected by nitrous oxide. And
we have a nice synesthesia moment, because Mariner is able now, under the influence of the nitrous oxide, is able to taste sounds.
Yes.
And there are chemicals that can induce synesthetic experiences in humans. Nitrous oxide is not one of them, as far as I know, but it is possible for non-synesthetic people to enter an alternate state of consciousness based on psychoactive chemicals and have synesthetic experiences, like being able to taste sounds.
Yep. That would be interesting. Yeah. um, so then they go through this room that has the deflector shields operating room, but it's got lower gravity. So at first they're having fun floating around, and then the deflector shield gets turned on, and Boimler ends up
becomes a tilt-a-whirl ride.
Yes, he's like stuck to the sides of it, and they Tendi and Mariner have to take off the uniforms and tie them into a rope in order to catch him and pull him out of it. Out of the thing.
So Mariner is the anchor. They've got their uniforms between them as the rope, and then Tendi has to grab Boimler off the spinning wall as he's whipping by multiple times a second, and she's just got to reach in and grab him by the purple hair and yank him off the wall.
Yes, by the hair. So they end up in this anteroom to the room where the computer that does the lottery is, and it only opens, like the door between them only opens once an hour because plot reasons.
This is a ridiculous place to put an air-gapped computer.
Yes. Well, did this not remind you a lot of Galaxy Quest? Like this whole crawling through these spaces.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of feel like this is a Galaxy Quest homage, like here. And so they're in there, and that's when Delta Shift shows up too, and they're in there, and they end up bonding, or apparently bonding, but they have this discussion about what is your saying for telling someone to enter your room? Like, when I'm in the room, I'm going to say, like Riker does, I'm going to say, come. And, they start practicing. And what is your word going to be? I'm going to say that too. No, that's my word. And like this whole thing, like, I never even thought about it, like that you would have different, enter, or whatever.
And Tendi mine is going to be welcome, friend. That way they'll be your friend.
That's very Tendi. I mean, that's one of the things I love about Lower Decks is it kind of finds these things of like these tendencies in Star Trek and kind of highlights them and blows them up. And like, do you ever notice this weird thing that they do? Yeah, everybody has a thing that they say to tell someone to come in the room. Like, that's what one of the things I really enjoy about it is they really dig into the Star Trek lore and the 50, 60 plus years of it and pull this stuff out. Yeah, so they have this bonding moment with Delta Shift. They pretend that they're all going to enter their names into the lottery together. So, it won't be just our names in the lottery, but all of us. And so whoever gets it, gets it. And then they betray them. This curse your sudden yet inevitable betrayal. Sorry, that's a Firefly reference.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
a T-shirt for that.
That's right. That's a good shirt. And then, of course, it turns out there's not 4 rooms on deck 1, but 1 room on deck 4. And it is so very Lower Decks that instead of seeing the solution that Delta Shift does, which is we share the room, they're like, no, we're not going to take it at all so that we all stay together. And they missed the obvious solution, which would have been beneficial to them in the end. And so that was kind of funny. And then it turns out there's a party, and they want to how do we get invited to the party in the Delta Shift party room? And that's kind of where that storyline ends. So to go back to the forced vacation for the Freeman and the engineering staff, we get this funny tour of the facilities there by an Efrosian. Edosian, sorry. No, Efrosians are the white hair ones. Yeah.
So her name is Taz, and she's an Edosian. She has... which means she has 3 arms. She's got 1 on each side of her chest and 1 in the middle of her chest, which is biologically completely ridiculous. Yes. But I like seeing that race because it was originally introduced in Star Trek the Animated Series. The navigator who took over Chekhov's role was Lieutenant Eriks, and he was an Edosian. And then the sometimes replacement for Uhura was Lieutenant Mores, who was Cation, like Dr. Ta'ana. And I like seeing both of those species on the show. Yeah.
So they get a tour. They see the puppy playroom. But then she says, for the more deviant, there's a kitten playroom. For no explanation why that's more deviant. Just use the assumption.
Also, well, yeah. I like how Taz is escorting the group down the hallway, and she's standing next to Captain Freeman, and Captain Freeman makes a remark to all the engineers that are following them, and then they turn around and the engineers are way behind them. They're right back at the beginning of the corridor, and they're clearly working on the elevator. and it's like, what are you doing? And Billups starts to hem and haw about it, and Rutherford finally says, we fixed it.
It's right. And they have these wristbands that show their stress levels, and they go from yellow, green if there's no stress, red if there's super stress, and then there's like a black level, which Freeman eventually gets to. And at one point the engineers game it by they're in a spa, so they have cucumbers on their eyes, that whole thing. Yeah. They slip cucumbers between the wristband and their wrist to make it turn green, because cucumbers must be super unstressed, I guess.
Well, I think it's just, it cuts off the contact with your skin, and so it can't monitor your stress and it doesn't detect any, and so it goes green.
Yes. Well, we're just doing it for you, Captain. There's a Tellarite mud bath.
I like the concept of they're giving them mani pedicures at this point. And so they're both having a pedicure and a manicure at the same time. And this was a great idea, they thought, because it would keep the engineers' hands and eyes busy. Because they've got their hands being manicured, and they've got the cucumber slices over their eyes, so they can't fix anything. or design plans for things, which is another activity that one of them had been caught doing, was just designing plans. But then they've just gamed it by putting the cucumbers under the wristbands.
Right. Yeah, someone else was getting a massage, but underneath the table, like as she's face down, she's working on fixing some gizmo thingy.
Doing a design, yeah.
Yep. There's a Klingon battle room that they see.
I also like the description of a mani is like a petty for your hand toes.
Right, for your hand toes. Yeah, the Klingon in the battle room. There's like, we don't know how to get him out of there. We're afraid of him. Like, he's still going nuts in there. Freeman ends up getting super stressed out, as I mentioned, because the engineering staff keeps making workarounds to relaxing, and she becomes a black bander. That's what they call her.
Yeah, and it's very dramatic, and Taz says, we've been treating the wrong patient. This woman's been under extreme stress. She hasn't recently been possessed by any ancient artifacts, has she? and Billups says, maybe a couple?
A couple. So the engineers need to sacrifice their workaholism to save her. She calls them, "You're just a bunch of Geordie LaForges," which is a nice reference.
I like how because the engineers are wanting to be helpful,
right?
And when they finally realize what they need to do, or what they apparently need to do, Billups is talking to the engineers, and he says, we need to find a way to stop engineering and start relaxing. and then Rutherford says, sir, I think I know what we shouldn't do. Right. What we shouldn't do. Yes, engineering. That's what you shouldn't do.
Right. But what they end up doing is they do more engineering. They create a pod that instantly relieves stress. They say it's better than 1,000 massages combined. And they shove the captain in it, and instantly she's de-stressed. Like, whatever this pod does, it instantly de-stresses, and it's a miracle. It's the most amazing thing. We're gonna be able to help all of Starfleet with this. And Taz orders it destroyed.
Put one on every ship.
Yes.
And Taz is like, then her assistant is like, then the Federation wouldn't need ships like the Dove. And Taz orders it ejected into space.
Right. Because if there's a universal truth, it's that the government workers never kill the job. Don't kill the job. So that's where we basically end things. They get back from the spa, and Mariner says to Rutherford at one point, "Hey, relax, man." He's like, "I am relaxed. I just got back from a spa." He yells at her angrily. So that's where we end things. So any other notes?
Nope.
I'll do it then. We do want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Star Trek, including Ben H., Piotr T., Gareth H., Samuel A., and Judson G. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Star Trek and all the shows at StarQuest, and you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So we'd love to hear what you thought of Room for Growth, this Lower Decks episode. You can let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/trek. our Facebook page at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. You can send an email to trek@sqpn.com or visit our Discord community at sqpn.com/Discord. And we'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the next new episode of Lower Decks. And until then, Jimmy Akin, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of Star Trek.
Thank you. Live long and prosper. And one final note, notice that this episode's title, Room for Growth, didn't have any deeper meaning to it, really.
Yes,
it wasn't a clever title. It was a functional one for once.
Yeah, well, there was room for them to move it. They were looking for a room to move into, and Freeman had some room for growth in her relaxing.
And my point is, this title it's not a clever title for once.
Nope, it just is what it is. Anyway, once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Star Trek on StarQuest, and remember, Bold Boimler is unsustainable.